Happy to come to you today here from my little cabin up in the mountains of Highland County, Virginia. And you'll hear the noise in the background of the creek. It's a beautiful February day, and I've actually got my little fire burning over here, boiling down some maple syrup, sap from the maple trees here. And looking forward to maybe frying a few flapjacks here with some maple syrup one of these days. But as I was reflecting on the year that we've been blessed having this property out here, and I want to talk to you today about a specific book that's been a gift to me. And the book is called The Gap and the Gain, subtitled High Achiever's Guide to Happiness, Confidence, and Success. Don't think it's exclusively for people who consider themselves high achievers, but nevertheless, for people who live in the gap, struggle to celebrate the gains they've made, this is for you. And entrepreneurs, leaders, I think are some of the ones who struggle most with that. Now, this book is written by Dan Sullivan with Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Dan Sullivan is the founder of Strategic Coach, and he's coached thousands of executives over the years. And Dr. Benjamin Hardy is an organizational psychologist, and he's done a lot of writing with Dan Sullivan. And his books that are coming out are really fantastic. This one particularly came to me at an important season of life. In the table of contents, he really has it down into two parts. And the first part is get out of the gap, and part two, get into the gain. Now, what's he mean by gap and gain? Many of us tend to live in the space between where we are and where we think we ought to be at this stage of our lives. And visionary leaders are particularly afflicted with this disease. We have aspirations, we have goals that we've had for years, and we're strategically trying to move toward those goals and outcomes. And we're often frustrated, we're unhappy because we keep seeing how far we have to go. We keep often beating up on ourselves and thinking we ought to be further on this journey. We ought to be have greater hallmarks of success. We ought to achieve more of the mission that we're on. And so we beat up on ourselves. And my own kind of inner mantra I discovered here a couple of years ago was more, better, faster. And believe me, that's an exhausting way to try to live. So Dan Sullivan just acknowledges that this is the way a lot of people are wired, and it has a particular set of challenges that result in many leaders being unhappy. So he wants us to get out of the gap, get out of that space between what is and where we think we ought to be, and instead focus a bit more on the gain. Think about where we were, the progress we've made, the things we have accomplished with the gifts and resources that we've been given. So I'm going to read a couple of quotes here, and just to contextualize it, I think one of the reasons it's so poignant for me here is I drive in here to my camp, and this past summer with my grandsons, we started building this little shed cabin out here. And I thought we'd have it done in a couple of weeks. We kept working. Well, it's now usable. I've got the wood stove burning inside, and it's quite functional. However, the outside is unfinished, and the lumber pile is still down on the other side of the creek. And I come out and I tend to quickly live in the gap between I really ought to be further along, I ought to have this finished. And then I remind myself, you know what? Celebrate the progress we've made. This is a huge amount of progress in the past year. And I can enjoy the cabin. I can enjoy the wood stove. I got a little griddle inside of my workbench, and I can griddle up some hamburgers. I can cook up a breakfast, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful gift that we've enjoyed immensely. And so it brings a sense of joy and happiness. Where, as if I were to think, well, I had thought maybe we'd actually have a cabin built over here, and this would be my woodworking shop, and a host of other things that I thought we might have done by now. I live in that gap. It's a source of unhappiness and discontent and frustration. And so Dan Sullivan just really, really helps us navigate that challenge. So a quote here as he starts the book from another fellow, Dan Jansen. He says, "You and you alone are the person who should take the measure of your own success. I do not try to be better than anyone else, only try to be better than myself." And here's the place we have to start. Rather than comparing ourselves with everybody around us, We have to say, who am I? Who have I been created to be? What gifts have I been given? And how will I offer them to the world? How can I develop and grow, invest, mature, and get better beyond this growth trajectory, rather than focus on the gap between where we are and where we thought we ought to be? Another quote here, you have to learn to appreciate the progress first. So he quotes, before you start the process, he talks about establishing these criteria for progress. Make sure to recognize and appreciate the progress and achievements you've made so far. And again, that's a way to say, here's what we've already accomplished. Let's be grateful for that. Let's celebrate that. And then measure your own progress. Measuring your own personal progress keeps you out of comparison with others. And as you know, comparing yourself with others is a trap. I'm not them and they are not me. They have a different set of circumstances than I have. And I'm responsible to steward the gifts and abilities I have and the opportunities I've been entrusted with. And all of us have to start exactly where we were born, the culture, the context, the season of life we're born in, the family to which we were born, the communities in which we were born. We didn't choose those things. We have to receive them, and we begin our lives from there as we become adults. And we have to measure the progress from where we started to where we're going. Another quote, the only way to measure the distance you've traveled is by measuring from where you are back to the point where you started. So as I come out here on the weekends and enjoy this beautiful space in the mountains of Virginia, I have to remind myself, enjoy what's here. Enjoy the process. Don't wait to enjoy it and experience the happiness until you have achieved it, got it developed. The joy is in the journey, as we say. And we need to celebrate the progress that we've made and live in that gain rather than in the gap between where we are and where we hope to be. So I happily celebrate today my unfinished shed and look forward to the day it's finished, of course, but there will always be something else. There will always be another thing to get done, to complete. And the same is true for you. Again, I'm going to recommend this book to you, The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. You can pick it up on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, or even at your local booksellers. I do recommend it to you, and live in the gain. Be grateful for the things that you accomplish every day. Celebrate those with gratitude. Thank you.